Hello, my name is Pastor Todd Christine, and I serve as senior pastor of Grace Church, a United Methodist community here in wonderful Hanover, Pennsylvania. Maybe you have experienced it. Maybe you've had a great experience. Maybe you've had a negative experience. Maybe it's been a bridge. Maybe it's been a wall. Maybe it's been empowering. Maybe it's been confining. No matter what it is or what kind of experience you've had with it, we all understand culture. We may not always know how to define it or what it looks like, but each of us understands that word. We all understand culture. Culture, to be defined, is a group of individuals who share in common practices, beliefs, virtues, values, customs, seen and unseen, in which they hold value. There's worth, they're treasures, and they look at them as being defining of who they are and what they do. Now, as a church leader, either as a pastoral leader or as a leader in laity, you probably have bumped up against culture. Maybe you bumped up against something that was 200 years old, or the family who had always been here had put into place, or someone who had donated, or the ultimate brass plates that are mounted everywhere. That's culture. Those things are culture. We're people who have placed value on a particular thing at a particular time for a particular reason. And it's here where leaders kind of get themselves in trouble. We get ourselves in trouble because we don't understand the culture. We don't understand the why. We don't understand the relationship. And so we bump up against it and damage, or should I say, conflict occurs. And I'm certain that we've all experienced this in one way or another, especially in the life of the church. When I was asked to provide a text for the Fresh Expressions video series, I wanted to look into what this meant. What was the relationship? What inhibits fresh expressions? And of course, the answer is culture. Culture is normal. It's what makes us feel comfortable. It's what makes us sit down on the sofa, have a cup of coffee, read a book. It's a living room, it's a magazine, it's a practice, it's a tradition, it's a habit or a hobby, whatever it is. It's this comfortableness that makes it feel home. Home is where there's little risk. Home is where there's little change. Home is this place that we can depend on to be constant. So ultimately, Fresh Expressions challenges normal. It challenges the very things that we're comfortable with. Culture, if I was to give it a picture, I would describe as being a large seafaring barge. This heavy, huge ship of which when it comes into seaport, it begins to slow down almost 5 miles off of the coast. It slows down. It takes forever to turn. It takes forever to start. But once it's going, it is almost impossible to stop. I can't help but think of the movie Speed 2. I know I'm dating myself just a little bit here. But where the cruise ship is running into the harbor and it's not be able to be stopped, and it goes a long way inland before it's finally stopped. It takes a lot of energy and effort to stop or change a culture, but it's an important step. It's an important foundational step, and it's an important step for all leaders. Leaders, we are the vision casters to change culture. A vision of who we want to be and where we want to go. Now, that means that we have to articulate that vision. We can't just say, this is X, and X is what we're going to be passionate about. It's what we're going to own. It's what's going to bring us where we need to be. But we have to be able to articulate in a way that people can see it. That's why it's called a vision statement with your organization, something that you can see, something that you can give a picture to. It's not a measurement gauge. It's not a qualifier. It's a vision. So Fresh Expressions is the cutting edge of ministry. And so by nature, it's at odds with everything we understand in culture, because it's pushing the norm. I love the quote from Olu Brown. Olu Brown's book, Leadership Directions from Moses, has a fantastic couple of sentences I want to share with you. Oftentimes, the difficulty of leading people is taking them to places they cannot see and managing their complaints along the way. We have vision as leaders in our church. And ultimately, that's because that's what we spend our time focusing on, don't we? We spend our time churning the waters to say, where our efforts need to be. Where do we need to go? God, show us what it is we need to have in our lives. Where are the places we need to go? Ella Brown goes on to say, one way true vision can be recognized is that everyone around you will not agree. By definition, and this is what's important, a vision stretches reality. It's not a quick and easy fix. It's a mountain that rises up in your line of sight. At its first foreboding, seemingly impossible. But the closer you get, the more attainable it becomes. If you can persevere in the face of the negative forces that are going to rise up against you. We're talking about risk. You see, what makes people uncomfortable, what makes people shift in their seats that are in a particular culture is when it's a culture of safety, a culture of normal, a culture that is sedentary, is when we begin to talk about risk. Are we willing to risk everything for what we might gain? And this is what challenges folks. So we as leaders, we need to understand and get a foundation of where people are coming from so that we can better articulate where they need to go. I think about the book written by Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference. It's a fabulous book on what it means to argue persuasively. And Chris begins to say, you have to get your people to say, yes, that's right. The person who's across the table needs to hear you name their fears, name their frustrations, give voice to their injustice. Not agree with it, just name it. To name something so that they know that you understand where they're coming from. When we are looking at changing culture to get churches to understand and accept and embrace and live vitally into Fresh Expressions ministry, these are the things that we have to look at. How can we get our leadership and our congregational culture to change, to embrace risk? Embrace risk. That's what takes us to new heights. So we take a vision, something that we can see, and we stretch the reality. We say, when people say it's impossible, we're on the right path. We're on the right path. I love this. I love this example from Olu Brown as he looks at Moses and Moses' leadership skills, taking the people of Israel from enslavement in Egypt to freedom, to liberation, where there will be vitality and future. And it's a hard thing. But leaders, we have to have the courage to be the change in culture. And that takes work. Now, my generation and the generations coming after me, one of the things that we don't like to do is to see a lot of time invested in change. Change for us is something that should be done on the spot. It should be the turn of a corner. It should take minimal effort and minimal resources. But that's not the reality of the world that we live in. Because the reality of the world that we live in is that change takes time. But change goes faster with the more work and energy that we're willing to put into it. Now, I'm not talking about advertisements. I'm not talking about movements. I'm talking about relationships. Leaders that invest in relationships constitute change. Investing in relationship. That means that you can't change the culture from your office. You can't change the culture through an email, through a telephone. You have to change the culture on a one-to-one. Sitting down with the people in your life, the people you share ministry with, the people who are against you, and the people who are for you, to say, hey, this is where I think we're going. This is where I think we need to go. How can I get you on board? Are you willing to put in the time and the work to appreciate where they've been so that they can usher you where they need to go? You see, it becomes a teamwork thing. It's a teamwork thing. Ministry is a teamwork thing. And Jesus sends his disciples out 2 by 2. Jesus sends his disciples out as the 12 gather. He says, you guys are going to be in ministry together. It's not an I thing, it's a we thing. And that's where I think one of the foundations of Fresh Expressions is all about, is this understanding of community. We lead in community so that we lead to community. And we're taking this out to the world. So leaders, have the courage to change a culture. Push their reality. And then help to build the relationships that will get you there. Thank you so much.